Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, September 4th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. California already has some of the most expensive gasoline prices in the country, and that has state lawmakers looking for solutions.
There's been a lot of discussion kind of behind the scenes in the legislature and with the governor over the past few months about things they can do to sort of get that oil pumping again.
The sudden shift in tune on in-state oil production by Democrats. We have that conversation coming up in just a moment, but first, these headlines. A quick-moving wildfire burned several homes in a historic gold rush town in Tuolumne County on Wednesday. Lisa Dwyer with the Associated Press has this report.
Settled around 1850 by Chinese miners, the wildfire has rapidly expanded in size, forcing the evacuation of the Chinese camp town, about 57 miles east of Stockton. It's one of several fires called the TCU September Lighting Complex, which is burning in multiple locations with no containment. Chinese Camp Town was settled by Chinese miners after they were driven out of a nearby camp. Originally called Camp Washington, its name was soon changed to reflect the thousands of people from China who settled in California during the gold rush.
That was Lisa Dwyer with the Associated Press. A national progressive leader is weighing in on the race to unseat Republican David Valadao. Silicon Valley Representative Ro Khanna threw his support this week behind Randy Villegas. He's one of the Democrats running in California U.S. House District 22. That includes the communities of Bakersfield and Delano. District 22 is a swing district and one of the districts that Newsom hopes to make safer for Democrats in the redistricting effort. Dr. Jasmeet Bains, currently in the state assembly, is also running in that district. The California State Assembly approved the SAFE Act earlier this week. That's a bill that would require schools to notify students and staff if federal immigration agents come onto campus. State Superintendent Tony Thurmond, who's a candidate for governor, says that the measure's about protecting students' right to learn without fear.
No one should ever be afraid to go to school. But that's what's been created in this climate.
Thurmond says districts could lose up to $150 million if families pull their children out of class because of immigration enforcement. The bill applies to K-12 schools, community colleges, and Cal State campuses. The bill asks UC schools to voluntarily comply. It's expected to head soon for Governor Newsom's signature. Roughly $10 million are coming to Merced to help produce more jobs. As KVPR's Rachel Livenall reports, it's part of an initiative by Governor Newsom.
The Jobs First initiative is looking to offer 500,000 job apprenticeships by 2029. The funding from the state is going to places like Merced College, where ag tech programs are being built. Cody Jacobson is the Dean of Agriculture and Industrial Technology at the college.
You have all these different pieces of equipment that tie into ag tech, but you don't have operators, you don't have engineers, you don't have the folks that are repairing all of these pieces of equipment. So that's really where we come into play.
Jacobson says the initiative could lead to 3,000 jobs that pay above the minimum wage. For KVPR News, I'm Rachel Livenall.
A Tulare County water agency says it is not responsible for millions of dollars once committed to repairs on the Friant-Kern Canal. Operators of the Friant-Kern Canal are suing for $200 million the agency once agreed to pay for repairs. Our news partner SJV Water reports the Eastern Tule Groundwater Sustainability Agency is asking a Tulare County judge to dismiss the case. The agency argues that much of its membership has split off to form other water agencies. The case could head to trial in December.
If you start your day with Central Valley Daily and are looking for a companion program in the afternoon, there's All Things Considered. Hi, I'm Sarith Hawk. Each weekday afternoon, I'm on KVPR's broadcast, bringing you the day's local and national news. Join me for All Things Considered, weekdays from 3:30 to 6 on KVPR. You can also stream us online at kvpr.org, through your smart speaker, and on the KVPR app.
And now to our main story. For most of his time in office, Governor Gavin Newsom's approach to the oil industry has been adversarial. He has slowed down the oil permitting process, reduced fracking, and accused petroleum producers of manipulating oil prices to sway voters. But Newsom's rhetoric and actions have shifted recently. So much so that he and Democratic leaders in the state legislature are reportedly trying to fast-track new policies to help boost oil production in the state. So what could be behind this? And what could this mean for the state's petroleum epicenter in Kern County? We asked all of that to CalMatters reporter Alexei Koseff, who recently wrote about this shift in strategy by Democrats. KVPR Associate Editor Carrie Klein spoke to Alexei to discuss the potential legislation a little further.
So first, Alexei, you write in your report, after years of making the oil industry into a political boogeyman, Newsom has become surprisingly receptive to its message. What has changed, and what are Democrats doing now as of just the last few months?
Well, basically, the chickens are coming home to roost. The industry was warning that California was going too far. It was making things too difficult to do business here. And now there are actually 2 refineries in the state that are either on the verge of shutting down or planning to. That could have a massive dent in the amount of oil that can be refined into gasoline in the state. There's only really about 9 or so refineries left that can really do that in California. And so because of that, we're looking at a situation where gas prices could be soaring in the next couple years. And all of the Democrats, Newsom included, are sort of having this moment of realization that, these threats were kind of real. And now maybe we have to reverse course to avoid a disastrous situation.
And so what are Democrats and Newsom doing now in the face of this potential spike in gas prices?
So one of the things that has been talked about a lot is trying to boost domestic oil production, meaning the oil production that happens here in California. That's been on the decline for a long time. As I mentioned, the industry has complained about all these kinds of regulations that have made it so hard to do business here. And California isn't really giving permits for new wells the way they used to because of concerns about environmental impacts and public health impacts. Very important, serious things to consider. But the result is that most of the oil now that comes in to be refined is from not just outside the state, but outside the country. It's more expensive to do that. The pipelines that bring the oil from, mainly Kern County, the sort of the heart of the oil industry in California, to these refineries are running very low and may even have to shut down. So there's been a lot of discussion kind of behind the scenes in the legislature and with the governor over the past few months about things they can do to sort of get that oil pumping again and kind of rolling back some of the, environmental obstacles to get that oil pumping again.
Okay, so let's shift and talk a little bit more about the petroleum industry itself. So why are those 2 important refineries closing down?
There's sort of a lot of elements that have built up over the years. California has a unique blend of gasoline that it requires. It has higher environmental standards because of concerns about air pollution that are, long standing for decades. There's this cap and trade program that listeners may have heard of that basically requires heavy climate polluters to buy credits or reduce that pollution. And the oil industry is a big part of that. So all these things kind of make it not just more difficult, but also more expensive to do business in California. And at a certain point, a lot of companies have just kind of gotten fed up and said, you know what, we don't want to deal with that anymore. And they're shutting down these refineries. The number of refineries over these past few decades has substantially decreased in California. There used to be dozens, and now the number is fewer than 10.
Interesting. So, some folks might wonder if closing these refineries is actually an oil industry tactic to try to really, force changes on a political level or a legislative level. But it sounds like you're saying, there just have been all these factors that are really forcing these facilities to close.
I think it's very fair to ask about the political tactics. And certainly that's what a lot of people thought last year as they were making these threats that the new laws that were coming into effect were going to lead to these kinds of closures. But now we're actually seeing those closures happening.
Mm-hmm.
So whether the reason is business or politics, the effect is going to be the same for Californians, which is that there's going to be a smaller supply available. And if demand doesn't decrease as well, then the price of oil here and gasoline is just going to keep going up.
Okay, and so the facilities that are shutting down are refineries, as you've said. How would boosting production actually help close the gaps left by those refining facilities?
So what the industry has said is that the amount of crude oil that's been pumped here in California has just been in this terminal decline recently. And that is shrinking the amount that's available to basically ship through these pipelines straight to the refineries from the oil fields in places like Kern County. That's the cheapest, most direct crude oil that these refineries can get and turn into gasoline that goes, to your gas station and then you pump it into your car.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means shipping in more from other countries like Ecuador or Brazil. That's more expensive. That adds to their costs. Those costs get passed on to the consumer. So their argument is if we can get more oil pumping here in California, that can keep costs in check a bit. There is obviously skepticism from environmental advocates and other opponents of the industry who say that this is kind of just a handout to domestic producers of oil, and it's not going to have any real impact on the price ultimately. But that's something that we're going to have to see whether it plays out in the long run or not.
Now, Kern County is, of course, ground zero for California's oil and gas, as you've said. Some estimates say the county accounts for about 75% of California's oil production. Kern County is also, interestingly, ground zero for renewable energy production. What could this shift back toward petroleum production mean for Kern?
I mean, if nothing else, it's a good economic boost for a community that needs it. That's long been one of the arguments here in California as well about keeping oil production going, is that there's a lot of places that are reliant on these jobs and reliant on that business to keep their economies going. So this could be a boon for Kern County if this oil really starts pumping again. And I think that's probably another source of skepticism from perhaps some of the opponents of this proposal, is that, again, they see this as sort of an economic handout that is really just boosting one industry and one community without really having a larger economic impact for all Californians.
Okay, Alexei Koseff, state capitol reporter for CalMatters, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you.
That was KVPR Associate Editor Carrie Klein speaking with CalMatters reporter Alexei Koseff. Lawmakers reportedly have until the end of the legislative session on September 12th to pass any oil-related legislation. And you can read Alexei's full report and more statewide reporting at calmatters.org. And that is today's show. This episode was produced by Jonathan Linden, Carrie Klein, and KVPR, with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
It's rare to find a podcast that can actually change your life. But when the show's called Life Kit, that's kind of the whole point. I'm Mariel Segarra. 3 times a week on the Life Kit podcast, we guide you through a topic we could all use help with, from personal development to healthy living to managing your dinero, with takeaways so you can start living what you learn right away. Escucha el Life Kit podcast from NPR.